people. Sit on that spot. Okay. I stepped on this step. I stepped on this step. So the library is the only part of Center Block that remains from the original building. The rest, so all this part right here, burnt down and they had to rebuild it from 1916 to 1922.
So the reasons we have is, do you guys know who actually made this decision? It was the Queen. And in Canada there was tension between Upper Canada and Lower Canada. So she wanted to choose something that she thought would be fair. So choosing Ottawa, which is in Ontario, but Quebec right there, which is Lower Canada, it used to be known as Hull, together both cities are the capital regions together. So that's one reason. The other reason was our capital was on Niagara-on-the-Lake, right next to the Americans. And what happened?
Well, there was the War of 1812,
exactly.
The Battle of Fort George.
So Canadians said, whoa, these Americans are not so nice, they're not so friendly. We need some space between the border. And that's why they decided to have it up. Yet, because they needed the water, as you mentioned, they had to build the Rideau Canal to connect to the St. Lawrence Seaway. So that's why the Rideau Canal was built. It was man-made to move lumber from the Algonquin area up here, which is full of trees. They would just throw the logs down the Rideau, St. Lawrence, and it would go out to the ocean. So that's why Ottawa has happened.
Anyone know where the word Ottawa comes from?
I know.
That way? It means trade. This is a major center for trade. So that's where the name Ottawa actually comes from.
Here's the Parliament building where government stuff happens. Here's called the East Block.
And so the East Block is among one of the best preserved buildings that we have on the hill, and also one of the best examples of high Victorian architecture that we have in Canada as well. So a really significant building. For the objects that you see here are from the era, including this bookcase and a couch that would have been in the office around the 1870s. Now, the Governor General, in terms of their functions and their role in Canadian society and in the Canadian political process, what do they do? Does anybody know?
Representative of the Queen.
Exactly. They represent the monarch here in Canada. Why do we talk so much about Sir John Macdonald? What makes his tenure as Prime Minister so remarkable? Exactly. It's really the fact that he was the first Prime Minister, as well as a father of Confederation. And so it was one of the main architects behind that project that united the Canadas. So today, Quebec and Ontario, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, the main drivers behind that project. And as I mentioned, very early after Confederation, Canada and the Canadian governments intended to make Canada a continental nation, to essentially try and reduce the American influence that was a huge fear for many Canadians, including McDonald's. And people on both sides of the border argued that Canada would benefit from a stronger union and eventually annexation for the United States. And so Confederation was the first step towards preventing that from happening. So by joining forces together, these four or three, if you count Canada's together, colonies, were all previously administered independently. But by joining forces, essentially they created a new political entity with a stronger federal government and more independence as well from Great Britain. And then, as I mentioned, so 1872 already, all of this stretching all the way into the Arctic was now part of Canada. Only basically Newfoundland and Labrador and Prince Edward Island in 1871 were part of Canada. But as you can see, it wasn't carved out into provinces yet. So this was all called the Northwest Territories. But as you can see, out of the Northwest Territories, that vast expanse of land, right here, Canada's 5th province was created. And that was Manitoba in 1870. From the furniture to the crown moldings to this gasolier right here. These were all the original furnishings and original details of the room. And as you can imagine, the gravity of the kind of discussions and decisions that we're taking here cannot be overstated, because this is really where the executive branch of our government, the heart of decision making in Canadian politics, this is where it all unfolded and all happened. And so at first, McDonald's went here with his 13 cabinet ministers, and cabinet also met here until the 1950s. And so decisions to create a Canadian citizenship, and Canada's approach towards First Nations people, the decision to grant women the right to vote, all these kinds of things, and the addition of new provinces were all discussed in this room by subsequent governments. And so, because of the kind of gravity that the discussions had, this is really why the room is so richly decorated.
Right, that was the tour of the East Block building on Parliament Hill. Pretty cool. Got some good history tidbits. Got to see some lavish old offices of senior officials of the government and some Canada history in general. So I used to actually be able to go into this, where they make really important decisions for the country and everything, but because of a terrorist attack a few years ago, you're no longer allowed to go in unless it's on a guided tour where they check all your items. Fortunately, I have not booked a tour, so I won't be able to get inside, but still some neat stuff to see here.
Just make sure we're not, just make sure he's not you might imagine it is a very old bar, and so the bathrooms are super sketchy. When they eventually were brought back to the city, they were handed their entire paycheck for the whole year in one go and cut loose. So a lot of them would come right here to Clarence Street and they would throw a ball. Taverns would pop up overnight. They would import liquor and women from Montreal often just to supply all of these lumberjacks. So it was quite the party street. We found a bill of a Monsieur Baptiste who ended up spending 95 of his around $120 paycheck in just 1 week.
Kind of a fun fact is that Darcy McGee, you can see his bar named after him right there, was actually violently murdered here, and this has been pretty much the only political assassination in Canada's history. To this day, we don't really truly know who murdered him. Someone was hung, but the evidence was pretty inconclusive, but it was good enough back then.
The person I just mentioned got violently murdered on Spark Street. So a journalist, historian, poet, and politician, so he got pretty busy.
Yeah, boys, it's your choice. It's optional. Sometimes my boys are very photogenic. Oh, really? Oh, good. Oh, I like it. No. No more. Take coffee off the breakfast. I can't fit you in. Oh. And maybe I'm just going to go.
So that wraps up my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe learned a thing or two about Ottawa and Canada in general. I'll be putting a link in the description to my Ottawa and surrounding area playlist, which includes videos like downtown Ottawa, some of the more interesting neighborhoods in Ottawa, as well as some videos of Gatineau Park that was briefly featured in this video. And if you want to follow my adventures, click on the subscribe button.